Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
That's Danielle.
And she's Justine.
And this is
That's What They Called News.
Finally. We finally got it.
We've only been doing this forever.
There it was. So, on my way over here, I have to tell you a story real quick.
Okay.
I was almost eaten alive in my car
By
a grasshopper. So, my AC is broken. Right?
Uh-huh.
And there's grasshoppers aplenty.
Yeah.
And I live in the country.
Yes.
So I'm driving my happy butt into town and I'm seeing all these grasshoppers and I'm like, oh, it'd be so gross if one of those got in my car. And then I was like,
Jinx yourself.
I did. So I go and get to the gas station. I was like, I want a soda. So I go in and get a drink and I come back out and I'm pulling out of the gas station parking lot and I see a grasshopper hop out of the side of my eye on the passenger side of the car. And I was like, it's okay. It's over. It's over there. It's fine. But then as I'm pulling onto the highway, it jumps from the passenger side into my lap on my leg. And I was like, so I like brushed it off and then it jumped from the floor like over my shoulder and I didn't see where it went. And I was like, I'm just going to pretend it jumped out the window and I'm going to just not think about it. And I'm going to drive to my friend's house and I will be fine. It's just like I had to do this.
It's fine. It's going to be fine. Everything is fine.
Because of a grasshopper.
You sound like my daughter.
Like, it's not that like, okay, it's not a fear. It's a disgust.
Yeah.
I don't like the way they feel and I don't like the way they sound. And it's gross to me.
Okay, but what is worse? A grasshopper or a June bug?
They're the same. They both have those sticky little legs.
And they both...
And hard bodies.
And they have like no control over the direction that they're moving.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I realize, I guess we usually get June bugs closer to July. I haven't seen June bugs. I'm going to jinx myself again. I'm knocking on wood. Ugh, I hate June bugs.
They're so gross.
Ugh, okay. So today's episode is going to be a little more somber.
Okay.
Okay.
Episode 7.
Yeah. We're gonna lower the excitement. Well, it does get exciting. It is exciting. It's a little more somber, a little more serious topic today. We're gonna be talking about the burning of Washington that happened in 1814.
Wow.
So it's really kind of a poetic couple of articles, and I think it's kind of relatable to the times we're living in right now. If you think about it as like not the British, but actually like politicians, I think it can resonate. So I'm not saying go to war, just to be clear. I'm not saying guns. That was not what I said.
No
burning things.
No, don't do
that's not what I said.
Don't do it.
But I think maybe a call to action should be had at this point.
Okie dokie.
I don't know what that action is. I do know what it's not.
This.
It's not this. But maybe someone will be inspired.
All right.
Because that's what we do, right? We read old newspapers and we inspire people.
Okay.
So this comes from the Inquirer, and that's a hard word to say, in Richmond, Virginia, August 27th, 1814. And it says, to arms. At length, a blow is struck, which must rouse the most listless and incredulous, a blow which would near create a soul under the ribs of death. Prepare, the Philistines be upon you. In what words shall we break the tidings to the ear? The blush of shame and rage tinges the cheek, while we say that Washington has been in the hands of the enemy. The Capitol and the President's house are in ruins. The particulars of this melancholy news have reached us in so confused a way that we are unable to state them with system or precision. Such as they are, we give them precisely as we get them.
But they just said they couldn't give them with precision.
And then they said precisely. I mean, it sounded good.
It did. It was written nicely.
We were apprised on Tuesday and Wednesday of the advance of the enemy as well as the march of our reinforcements. But the extent of their force, as well as our own, was entirely a secret. The most sanguine had frittered down the force of the enemy to 3,000 or 4,000. The most calculating put it down at 10,000 or 12,000. Our own force was variously reported from 4,000 to 10,000, and we were in hopes that by delaying the march of the invader, sufficient reinforcements would press forward to cut him from his shipping. We heard that troops were pouring in from all directions, and we had some hopes that they would arrive in time to baffle the scheme of devastation. Mm-hmm. Things stood thus until Wednesday last. In the course of that day, various explosions were heard by different individuals, like the rumbling sound of thunder, yet no speck of cloud tinged the horizon. The wind was against the sound, if it came from the Potomac, and many persons were of opinion that it could not travel from such a distance under such circumstances. Yet every eye was bent upon Washington, and the general impression was that this mysterious explosion came from that quarter, and that it was the roar of the artillery at Fort Warburton.
Yeah.
On Thursday, 3:00, the accommodation stage arrived. The report of tired passengers was that the enemy was pressing on to that city. General Winder, finding himself unable to cope with them at that moment, had thrown himself in the year with 5,000 troops, and that a corps of equal amount were accumulating and would collect at Bladensburg about midday on Wednesday, in that time to take the enemy in front and arrest his march to the city. It was said that 2,800 troops had pushed on from Baltimore, 2,000 from Stansbury's brigade in the country of Baltimore, that Barney had blown up his flotilla, which apparently everyone but me knew what that was. So if you're like me and don't know what a flotilla is, it is a fleet of ships, or like a floating armory. Anyway.
I knew that one.
Yeah. So did my husband.
He was in the military, so.
Yeah. And he's super smart. That Barney had blown up his flotilla and joined our troops with 500 of his brave crew. That Rogers, with his comrades, was pushing on from Philadelphia, and that a variety of reinforcements were marching from various quarters. A short time only was asked to save the city and cut off the invader.
So I have a quick question.
Sure.
Who do you think, stood there on the side of the road and counted all of those men as they walked by?
No one.
Where do they get the numbers? It was 3,000, but no, it was 4,000, or was it 10,000? I
feel like the army probably had a better idea of how many people there were. I just think the general, well, maybe not at that time, but they knew how many enlisted they had and stuff like that. So, okay. But that's why I think the numbers varied so widely, is because nobody really did know, and the people who weren't saying.
Okay, fine. Makes sense.
All right. Well, they're just going on what the scouts are seeing.
Yeah. Speed counters, those scouts.
Oh, I saw a post on Facebook that somebody was like, if you are a cattleman's wife and you have to count cattle, I don't know if you're aware of that, but when you're checking cows, you have to count pairs. And she was like, get an umpire's counter.
I saw that. Yeah.
I was like, she's so smart. So maybe he had one of those. Maybe he was just like, click, 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 click.
No, I don't feel like that was a thing in 1814. I'm envisioning an abacus.
Oh, he just has to keep track of how many times he flips it from side to side.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Sorry.
Back to the story. On Thursday night, we had no mail from Washington. This was ominous. Oh, wait, hold on. I didn't finish that sentence. Did I?
You did.
Okay, I did. On Thursday night, we had no mail from Washington. This was ominous. But we had a printed sheet and a few letters from Alexandria. This seemed to prove that on Wednesday the mail communication between these two places was cut off. It was too true. Our anxious citizens retired from the post office, full of conjectures, full of melancholy forebodings. Yesterday morning, the disastrous tale reached our ear. Two gentlemen arrived in the stage, Mr. Johnson from North Carolina and Dr. Judah from New York. They had passed through Washington on Wednesday. They had seen our troops on the retreat. They had heard the explosion and saw the light of our blazing houses. They were traveling in the stage from Baltimore, near Bladensburg. They were met by shrieking females who reported that the enemy were approaching. They saw our troops posted on the hill on this side, prepared to meet the enemy. The stage was therefore driven out of the mail road into a circuitous route, nor did they strike it again until they entered Washington near the post office. In the meantime, they had heard the explosion of guns and saw the smoke ascending, they supposed at Bladensburg. The sound and smoke lasted from 20 to 40 minutes. Our troops were seen upon the Capitol Hill on the retreat. The militia scattered, and in confusion, the volunteers of Baltimore and others in fine order. They were supposed to be retreating on the road towards Frederickstown. Finding the crowd coming on and retreating, these gentlemen thought it high time to provide for their own safety. And as no stage offered itself at Davis's, where they had stopped, they left their baggage behind them, seizing only a few articles for their immediate accommodation. While engaged in this office, they heard the cry of, "There goes the president!" This was on the Pennsylvania Avenue, leading from the Capitol to his house. One of them looked up and saw him driving in a carriage to his house. They subsequently understood that he had been in the action, doing all he could to animate the troops. How scary would that be?
Right. Also, okay. When did it switch from like the president living somewhere else to the president living in the White House? Because if he was leaving to go to his house, like...
I feel like probably about this point in history, they made that change.
Yeah, they're like, maybe you should just live
Maybe
here.
we'll just build you a room. I really don't know, but I think, honestly, I mean, they had to rebuild after this, so...
Yeah, might as well add a bedroom for the president.
Might as well. Misters Johnson and Judah made for the Potomac, which they crossed on the Great Potomac Bridge, along with nearly 200 baggage wagons. They saw an officer and a few men wounded in the wagons, and understood that a few of the British had been taken prisoners. In Alexandria, they understood that the Common Council had met and were debating to send terms of capitulation to the merciless enemy. Report stated the offer of $1 million to spare the city.
That's a lot of money.
But not for a whole city.
Okay, but $1 million in 18 whatever money?
I didn't do the calculation. Maybe we should do the calculation.
Okay.
All right, I'll keep reading.
Okay.
I don't think it's enough for a whole city. No stage offering at Alexandria, they took the way on foot to Occoquan, where they entered the stage and arrived with all the alacrity of an express in our city. About 8 o'clock, they heard the violent explosions. Thick smoke and floods of light succeeded, which they concluded to be the Capitol and the president's house, devoted to ruin. The light continued until daylight, so bright as to have enabled them to read a newspaper. You got an answer for me yet?
Nope. I'm looking. Hold on.
The particulars of this engagement, I know the word, I just can't make my mouth do it. Conflagration are of course known to us. They are yet to be told. Different accounts are given to the conduct of the militia, one to their credit, the other very much to their disgrace. Reinforcements were hourly arriving, but whether our troops are not too much dispersed to be rallied again and to return to the charge, it is impossible for for the pen that runs over these hurried lines to form even a conjecture. The pen that runs over these hurried lines.
It's
beautiful.
so beautifully written.
It is. I think we're close. Do, 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 do.
Okay, so $1 million in 1814 is worth $17,844,829.55.
No, that's not enough. $17 million. The school we have to rebuild is like $30 million.
That's a lot of money. Okay, fine.
I think that's correct. I feel like, no, it is. I know it is.
I have no idea.
So yeah, 17 million is not enough for a whole city. That's what I'm saying. Cheap asses. I wouldn't have taken it either. Okay. The pen that runs over these hurried lines to form even a conjecture. Here closes our imperfect narrative. And what can we offer of sentiment or of comment which does not suggest itself to the soul of the honest American? The fact will turn out to be that our troops were outnumbered in the contest, that those of the enemy were more numerous, those of our own were less numerous than has been generally supposed. The loss of Washington is the more to be regretted, because it ought to have been foreseen, ought to have been anticipated, it ought to have been provided against. It is the siren spell which the negotiation has flung around it that has done this. The ruin of Washington can only be washed out in the blood of the merciless enemy who has wrought it. To arms, then, Virginians, to arms. Let us bury all party differences. Okay, this is the part. This is the part that we need to listen to, my fellow Americans. To arms, then, Virginians, to arms. Let us bury all party differences until the foreign enemy is driven away. We have all the same dear country, whose safety and whose honor ought alike to be dear to us all. Shall it be said that a few foreign mercenaries have sacked the capital of the Old Dominion and trod upon the graves of our fathers? No, no, it must not be said. It shall not be said. We have arms, we have men, high-minded, generous men and women, who will step forward and rally around the banner of their country. Here, in this city, it is raised. It shall never be struck. Let us, my gallant countrymen, be but true to ourselves. Let us do justice to ourselves, and we may laugh this foe to scorn. Apathy has laid Washington at its feet. We will save Richmond because we are aroused. By the ashes of our gallant sires, by the bright honor which perches upon our crest, by the blood which streamed at Hampton and on the fields of Chippewa, by the light which beams upon the brow of our noble brothers, Scott and Gaines, who drew their breath here, let us arise and defend the inheritance and honor and liberty which we possess.
Wow.
Right? And after all, let us view this disaster coolly. What mighty feat has the enemy performed? He will attempt, no doubt, to magnify its importance, to give it a sort of eclat, I think is how you say it.
Okay.
It's a brilliant display or effect. To give it a sort of eclat, which most vanish at the touch of truth. They will sound it throughout Europe that they have seized the metropolis of the United States, guarded by hosts of soldiers who fled before the name of the Englishmen. Let the truth be told that Washington was but the other day a desert, that even now it consists of scattered dwellings, that its population is only 8,203, all sorts and descriptions of people, that its defenders were few, inferior in number to the assailant, and consisting of soldiers unacquainted with each other, and drawn together, some of them in the very hour of the engagement, and that this city was without a single wall, a single battery, a single fortification on the land side. Let these truths be told, and then let the British boast that they may, as they may. Our countrymen have beat them already, and with adequate opportunity, they can do it again. It is nothing, emphatically nothing. For the benefit of our citizens, let it also be recollected that when Philadelphia, then the seat of our government, then a large and populous town, was taken by the enemy during the War of the Revolution, it struck no terror into the American soul. No man looked down, no man cowered. The war ended gloriously, for it produced us the greatest boon which could be won by a brave people. Who then desponds? The power of the state is in motion. The man who is at the head of it is an energetic officer who deserves and who possesses our confidence. To arms, then, Virginians, to arms. Consolatory. The above gentlemen state another glorious victory upon the lines, that General Izard was attacked about Plattsburgh by a superior force of the enemy, that he beat them, taking 1,000 prisoners and killing and wounding 900. Remember, these are not your famous Lieutenant Wellington's troops. I think that's Lieutenant. Scott has beaten them. Gaines has beaten them. Izard has beaten them. Since writing the above narrative as fast as the pen could fly, we have other reports of the situation of Washington and the engagement of the troops. Several days will elapse before we shall receive a correct and circumstantial statement of the affair. It is rumored that the enemy were retiring to their shipping, but the rumor is as vague as it can be. Whew.
My goodness.
Wasn't that nice?
Whoever the author was a very good writer.
Right? Like, I mean, I would go fight.
Yeah.
If I was there, I'd be like, yeah, to arms. Let's go.
Right.
It was very inspirational, very motivational. So
It was.
it said it would be several days before they heard anything else. I need to take a drink real quick. That was a lot of reading. So we're skipping on, that was, let's see, what day did we start? The 27th of August. We're going to skip to the 31st of August.
Okay.
All right, so we're skipping ahead to August 31st. To arms, to arms. The state is up, and volunteers are flocking into the defense of their country, noble spirits who love her and feel her for her situation. You will not sit at your ease while you hear of the threatened invasion of your metropolis, of the seat of your government, of the deposit of your honor. No words can do justice to your virtue. With such a spirit, it is impossible ye can be slaves. Happy, proud is that nation, whose best blood is roused, whose gallant spirits fly to arms, when its soil is contaminated by the invader's foot. What made Rome survive innumerable dangers, and bear her liberties through them in majestic triumph? It was the genius of her people, that love and pride of country, which made every citizen feel an injury offered to her as an injury offered to himself. What made Greece immortal? What enabled her to withstand for so many years the power of Macedon and Persia? It was the spirit which led Leonidas to Thermopylae, the love and pride of Greece. Okay, I'm going to be honest. I had no idea what that meant. So I had to ask my husband, who knows lots. And he told me first it is Thermopylae, and that it's a narrow pass in Greece where a battle took place. And it kind of holds a lot more meaning than that, as in like it was kind of the last stand of the Greece people. The Grecians. The Greece people. Grecians, right? Sure. I don't know. But yeah, so it was like, it was really a moment, not just a place. But okay. We are proud to have witnessed the spectacle which is passing before our eyes. Crowds of men are pouring into the city, the high and the low, the rich and the poor. Men of all classes and descriptions have felt the holy enthusiasm of patriotism and are rallying around the banner of their country. In the adjacent counties, all distinction of party is lost. The Federalist and the Republican have rushed hand in hand to defend the capital of Virginia. This is no time, they cry, for the play of prejudice. Let bickering cease until our country has been saved. We shall have time enough for disputes, but there may be one moment only for preserving our honor. I'm gonna say that again. Louder for the ones in the back. We have no time for prejudice. Let bickering cease. Okay. The old and the young, the vulnerable sire whose brow is covered with the laurels of the revolution, and the young man who sighs to imitate the deeds of his father, have come forward without any distinction. What is it to me, says the revolutionary hero, that I have saved the liberties of my state, if her honor is to be sacrificed to the invader? What is it to me that my blood has once flowed, if I live to see her disgraced? What is it to me, says the youth of the state, that our fathers have fought for my liberties, if I cannot aid in the preservation of their honor? No, I am proud of my native state, and sooner than see her ravaged by a ruthless enemy, I will risk my life for her defense. The enrollment of volunteers is in the hands of the proper authority, and it shall in due time be exhibited to the world. It will do honor to the state. It will prove her to be invulnerable to the stroke of the enemy. Noble men, how proud should the state feel in the possession of such citizens? How proud will he be who will be able to say, I was one of the Virginia volunteers. Nothing can repress so generous a spirit. Neither age, nor distance, nor the enjoyment of domestic comfort is able to arrest it. As we dictate these hazy lines, our ears are saluted by the trampling of horses continually bearing its defenders to the Capitol. Wherever you cast your eyes along the streets, you see volunteers on foot or on horseback coming in. On Monday, 2,000 troops arrived, and most of them are volunteers. Men are not prevented from coming who have already served their tour of duty. Hundreds of troops are pouring in who have returned from Norfolk and bringing all their training and discipline with them. Captain Miller's troops of horse from Cumberland, who have lately returned from Norfolk, 60 strong, agreed to volunteer to a man. And 15 more joined them. Captain Wilson has arrived from the same county, 180 infantrymen, and with such a generous alacrity that they left their homes on Monday morning and arrived here on Tuesday morning, nearly 50 miles. It is impossible to specify now the number of character who have arrived. The roads are lined with troops in pairs or singly, some on foot and other on horseback. With their arms of various descriptions, they breathe a fire which warms and animates all around them. Well, my boys, said the brave revolutionary patriot Colonel Holcomb as he reached the square, our capital, you see, is standing. Where is the enemy that will dare blow it up? The organization of volunteers is rapidly completing, and Mr. Jennings, the contractor, pledges his honor and head that he will supply with provisions any number that may arrive. Come the Virginians, come all of you, whose hearts are interested for your country, whether you are invited by general orders or whether you are prompted by yourselves. Come hither and rally around her banners. Let all of us bury all party distinctions until the danger has passed. Let us cease to be called Republicans or Federalists. Let us join in an affair which concerns us all. Let us be Americans. The commander-in-chief is already in field. He has pitched his tent at Fairfield. He will lead us to action if the enemy dares to assail us. He will share our dangers. He will participate in our triumphs. His prompt decision will contribute to the salvation of his country. Soldiers, remember ye are now in service. Be attentive to your officers. Obey their commands. Subordination and discipline are the something of the camp. I gotta be honest, this word I could not read in the paper, and I really am sad about it because this is so beautiful, but it's just a missing word. If orders are given which you may not approve, suppress your opposition. You must now act, not talk. Obey, not prescribe. Now that I don't necessarily agree 100% with, but depends on what you're told.
Yeah, I suppose.
As for you, officers, who are incompetent to discharge your duties, who must be conscious of the ridiculous figure which you cut before your assembled citizens' shoulders. Soldiers, not shoulders. Resign your commissions at once and make way for abler men. If patriotism does not prompt you, let pride at least direct your choice. You have too long excited the laughter of your countrymen. Beware of their scorn and and indignation. Virginians, brave Virginians, you have every motive to rouse you. Remember Hampton. Remember the desolations of the Northern Neck. Call to mind the wrongs you have suffered, the slanders which have been heaped upon you by the mercenary prince of the enemy. Remember that since the commencement of this present war, you have been the peculiar objects of his resentment. Your bay, your rivers have been blockaded. Your shore have been wantonly and piratically plundered. That feeble sed which demands the protection of every honorable man has become the prey of the licentious soldiery. Arouse, my countrymen. The honor of vengeance approaches. Will you shrink away from an enemy who are so nobly resisted at Hampton, by Crutchfield and Corbin, by Shields and Anderson? Will you dread those military playthings, the Congreve rocket, which amused without alarming your brethren at Hampton? Virginia is now thrown upon her own resources. Her sons must show that they are equal to her defense. The eyes of the Union are upon us. Shall we draw upon their scorn? Shall we draw upon us their scorn? The bones of our fathers sleep in our soil. Shall we suffer a foreign enemy to trample on them? The attack on Washington should not discourage us. To pass over other distinctions between the conditions of the defenses of Washington and Richmond, this one is very striking, that the situation of the field of operations is very different. The whole country between Washington and Patuxent is level and cleared, with the exception of Bladensburg, where the hills enabled our militia to meet the enemy. But the ground between Richmond and the river is covered with wood, intersected by water courses and filled with defiles. The advantages of such positions are too obvious to be explained. The end.
Goodness gracious.
I know that was really long and not a lot of breaks, but I just felt like it was a really beautiful message.
It was.
And
I
kind
agree.
of like a rousing memory of not a personal memory at the times, but like a remembrance.
Wow, friend, how
of
old
that
are
moment.
you?
And we're coming up. Well, I think by the time this comes out, it'll probably be past 4th of July, but just kind of in that spirit.
Yeah.
And with primaries and everything coming up, I just think that we should give a little bit of thought to those words.
That's absolutely.
All right. What do you got for us?
So this is from the Inquirer in Richmond, Virginia, August 31st, 1814. It says, domestic, Winchester, August 20. So I'm not sure if we're August 31st or August 20th, but here we go.
I think the paper was from August 31st and the news is from the 20th.
Okay.
Because, it wasn't daily information.
Yeah. Okay. It says, shocking to humanity. On Tuesday last at Shepherd's Tavern near Opequon.
Yeah, I think that's close.
Okay. A jury of inquest was held over the body of George Copenhaver, a soldier in the 12th Regiment, U.S. Infantry. The circumstances attending the death of this unfortunate man are truly distressing, and we blush for the depravity of the man to be compelled to record an instance of such unparalleled barbarity. Barbarity.
Barbarity.
Okay.
Yeah.
It appears that the man to be compelled. It appears that the deceased has obtained a furlough from his commanding officer on the frontier. The purpose, visiting his family in the neighborhood of Stoverstown, that previous to the expiration of which he found himself so disabled by a swelling in his legs as to render it impracticable.
That is what it says.
All right. For him to undertake the march back, and applied for a military officer in his town for counsel how to proceed. who advised him to write to his commander informing him of his disability to return, which, however, the deceased neglected and was consequently advertised as a deserter and recognized as such in Stoverstown by a Sergeant Breedlove, who took him into custody and proceeded for this place.
Holy cow, that was a super long sentence.
It really was.
And I think it said that he is hurt and that somebody was like, oh, yeah, you should just, write your commander. And he didn't do it. So now they think he's a deserter.
And somebody recognized him and was like, you're a deserter. Come with me.
Oh, no. Okay.
All right. It appeared from the evidence presented to the jury that either form of a want of power or inclination, the deceased did not appear with as much expedition as the said sergeant thought necessary, in consequence of which the most sanguinary punishment and savage cruelties were inflicted, sometimes by him personally and others by his order. That reader may have an opportunity of judging his treatment. It is only necessary to state the evidence of one of the guard that accompanied him to this place, who made oath that before his arrival he could not have received less than 100 blows with a pole 7 or 8 feet long.
Ouch.
To wield, which sometimes required the use of both hands. That besides this, the sword was frequently applied to his back and was ducked in 2 different streams between this and Newtown.
You suppose that's like dunked?
I think so.
Okay. So like they dunked him in the streams?
Yeah.
Along with beating him with a stick and slicing him with a sword.
The good gravy.
Super fun. Okay.
Yeah. After his arrival, he was reported to Captain Morgan. Hey.
I bet he wanted some Captain Morgan about then.
Right? Who was then on his way to Washington with his company. When the first guard was discharged and another appointed, commanded by a corporal who kept some distance in the rear of the main body, the deceased frequently complaining of weakness and inability to perform the march, and at almost every murmur received blows on different parts of the body until it was literally beat into a mummy.
Jesus.
When they had proceeded 2 or 3 miles from town, the guard received orders from the lieutenant to bring him along at all hazards, but to put him in the baggage wagon, if room could be found. If not, tie him to the tail of the wagon, which latter ordered was compiled with, and an inhumane little monster who was driving the team at the time, Mr. Cochran, the proprietor, being a little in front, set the horse into a trot.
Oh my God.
The deceased, being weak and debilitated from the usage he had previously experienced, was unable to progress so rapidly and was consequently barbarously dragged over the rough and hard ground until Cochrane took the reins from the unfeeling driver.
Jesus Christ.
After this, his body was placed across on the horses and held in that situation until they arrived at Abrams Creek, where he was taken off and again dunked 3 successive times, being underwater each time without making the least opposition and exhibiting every appearance of a man in his expiring moments.
Jesus Christ, do you think?
He was again replaced on the horse, supported by one of the wagon guards, and had proceeded about half a mile when he was lifted off, was bled without effect, and expired in a few minutes.
Jesus Christ.
After a full examination of the witnesses, the jury concluded that Sergeant Breedlove was a principal cause of his death.
Abso-fucking-lutely he was.
Who was taken into custody by the sheriff and committed to the gaol in Winchester.
I think that's jail.
Okay. It would make more sense. Who
Yeah.
was committed to the jail in Winchester for further trial. We consider it a duty to mention, in justice to Captain Morgan, that he knew nothing of the transaction, and hope the other commissioned officers of the company may be found equally innocent of the murder. We have been thus particular in our relation of this unhappy affair, in the hope that it will be a warning to all non-commissioned officers who may be dressed with a little brief authority to be cautious how they inflict legal corporal punishments on their fellow men, and a lesson of the most serious moment to their superiors to have a watchful eye over their conduct, and not to invest devils in human shape with unlimited authority over those unfortunates who may happen to be placed under their control.
Again, I think this message rings very clear today, as
Yeah.
it did then.
Yeah,
And that was horrible.
that was so bad.
Oh my God. Okay. Jesus Christ, is it all bad? Did I not put anything good in this one?
Okay.
Nope, because we have another murder.
Augusta, August
We're going with
17th.
something happy next week, I promise.
Oh my gosh. Cruel and unprecedented murder. Friend, what have you got us?
I don't know.
Oh, on Friday the 5th, Ezekiel Alexander Esquire of Columbia County, his wife, and a Negro woman were barbarously
They really like this
and
word in this issue.
inhumanely murdered on
I mean,
their plantation.
I don't mean to make light of this, but isn't any murder inhumane?
I feel like no. I'm gonna
No?
say there are some humane ones.
Like?
If you murder a person who's like doing truly horrible things to other people,
No.
yeah,
No. Like in a court of law, like death sentence type of murder, that's not murder.
sure.
That's no. Yeah. Okay. Continuing.
All right,
Don't murder people ever.
we don't condone murder. So, these two people were inhumanely murdered on their plantation by two Florida Negroes who were lately brought from St. Mary by Mr. Alexander.
Okay, wait. Before we go further, I don't remember what's in this article. Jesus, I don't know. But I just want to say that these views are not necessarily our views.
No.
Okay. And any inappropriate words that are said are not our words. This is verbatim from the newspaper.
Yes.
And
Please forgive
so
the language.
just need to say that.
Yes. This murder was perhaps attended by more circumstances of cruelty than any we have ever before occasion to mention. It appears by the confession of the Negroes who are now confined in jail of this city that they had been maturing their diabolical plan for a month before the tragical scene took place, and were determined at every risk to effect it.
All right.
Although they confess Mr. Alexander treated them with great humanity, yet they were not satisfied with their situation and were at any risk determined, if possible, to get back to Florida.
So they were just trying to keep running away?
I guess. On the day in which this melancholy affair took place, they and Mr. Alexander were at work in the cornfield, and as they were about to leave it in the evening, they murdered him and buried his body on the spot.
Oh.
Then they went into the cellar where they killed the Negro woman, and afterwards into the house where they destroyed Mrs. Alexander, leaving marks of the most brutal and inhumane violence over every part of her body, which they dragged into the smokehouse, where they left the mangled corpse covered by a feather bed, The Negro woman they buried in the edge of the cornfield. After disposing of the dead bodies in this manner, they broke open every door and lock on the plantation and put into tow bags whatever property suited them. They afterwards dragged the gig about 100 yards from the house along the road, where they took it to pieces and carried it into the dwelling house, after which they closed and locked all doors and windows, and next day went to work as usual, and told the neighbors who called that their master and mistress had gone abroad, showing them the track of the carriage wheels from the house.
Oh, okay. That part now makes sense. I was like, why did they drive it away? Now I get it. They were having to escape. Okay.
On Saturday night, they started with their plunder and 2 of Mr. Alexander's horses, but expecting pursuit in the direction of St. Mary's, took the route of South Carolina, where they remained till Wednesday morning, when, in attempting to cross the bridge into the city, they were taken into custody, and as letters were in town describing them, it was easily ascertained that they were those who had committed the murder, especially as they traveled under their proper names. They have both made a full confession of the facts attending this lamentable circumstance, and will soon atone with their lives to the violated laws of humanity for this atrocious and savage departure from their benign principles.
Wow. This was a rough one.
Holy moly, friends.
It was shorter than usual, though. So I feel like that's something.
Well, yeah.
I got a joke.
Okay, let's hear it.
Why do bees go in their hive in the winter?
I told you this joke.
It's my favorite joke.
Okay, why?
Because it's warm.
Okay, I got one for you.
Okay, go.
What did the duck say when he bought chapstick?
Quack.
Put it on my bill.
Oh, man. Oh, gosh. I love dumb jokes. They're so good. I feel like I sent you a really good one today, but I can't remember.
Why do ducks have tail feathers? To cover their butt quacks.
Oh, yeah. That's why Donald Duck doesn't have to wear pants. Because he has tail feathers that cover his butt quack. Maybe I sent it to my sister.
I was going to say, I don't remember getting a joke from you today.
This was it. And if this doesn't sum up this, was it this episode or last episode that neither of us could talk last episod? Mm-hmm. So it says, my sister just tried to ask me if I wanted to go to bed, but instead it came out, do you need to use the sleep? And then she just kind of looked really horrified at herself and whispered, maybe I need to use the sleep. And that, folks, that is me. That
I need to use the sleep.
The smartest, dumbest person you will ever know. It's not me making fun of myself. I've accepted it. I'm not sad about it. I once drove into a car wash with my window down.
Yes. Okay, so Shelby took over the car wash here in town.
Yeah.
They had taken the door off of the automatic car wash because they were going to replace it. And I happened to pull up and I paid, and I was like, Shelby walked in from the far side of the car wash and he's like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to check some things out when this starts for you. So, don't think I'm being a creeper. And I was like, I've always thought you were a creeper. It's okay. But of course I had my window down because I was talking to him. And so I pull forward to the little bump thingy and nothing happens.
Oh, thank God.
And so I was sitting there and he goes, well, you pulled forward. Oh, try backing up a little bit. I was like, okay. So I back up a little bit and he's like, all right, now pull forward. So I pull forward and I don't even think I had completely hit the little bump thingy, and then the water just started spraying out and my window was still down and I was like,
So you've also experienced it.
Yes, and he cracked up laughing and he goes, sorry.
The best part about that is that you knew my car wash story.
I did.
Before that happened.
You know what? I thought about your car wash story right after it happened too.
Why didn't you call me
Son of a
immediately?
bitch. 'Cause I don't get reception in the car wash.
Oh, snapshot of your wet head and
Yeah.
a mistakes were made.
Yes.
Caption.
Yes.
Been epic.
There's water all across the inside of my windshield.
I have been there. Done that.
Oh my gosh.
We had a shared experience. In
We
that,
did.
friend. That makes my life so much better.
I'm happy that you find humor in my
too.
unfortunate circumstance.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. I hope that little ending cheered you up a little bit.
I hope, because that one was rough.
And we are always up for a dumb joke. So, all right. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at That's What They Called News, Twitter at That's News Pod, and you can send us any story suggestions you would like to at That's What They Called News at gmail.com.
Yay.
Have a good evening or good day, good morning.
Good night.
I don't know when
time
you're
of
listening
day.
to this. We're recording it at 9:00 at night. So good night.
Motherfucker.
We out.